Welcome everybody to this webinar that we're putting on today, presented by Symphony Talent and Reyes Holdings, titled Influencing the Candidate Experience with the Power of Programmatic. And we're super excited. We've got lots of great information to share with you today. And let's go ahead and talk about who the speakers are going to be. I am Kevin Grossman, the president of Talent Board and the Candidate Experience Awards, and I'm the moderator for today's presentation. And then our featured presenters are Leanne Murray, from the Director of Talent Acquisition at Reyes Holdings, and John Nelsen, the Programmatic Media Expert at Symphony Talent. And we're super excited to have them on board. Leanne Murray is, in her role, she leads the strategic TA efforts for Reyes Holdings, a global food and beverage distributor with over 30,000 employees. She's disrupted the traditional post and pray mindset, thank goodness, and is transforming the candidate and recruiter experience through the use of artificial intelligence technology, employment branding, and multifaceted recruitment marketing. She's got 20 years of experience, over 20 years of experience in human resources and organizational effectiveness, and she's an accomplished leader within the field of talent acquisition and talent development. Welcome, Leanne.
Thanks, Kevin. Happy to be here.
Excellent. And we've also got John Nelsen, as I already referenced. John is a strategy and client services director for Symphony Talent. He empowers the clients to transform the employer brand and recruitment marketing efforts by leveraging the power of programmatic in their digital and media strategies, which is happening more and more these days. He brings a decade of marketing and client-facing experience to the table from a variety of industries, and has also acted as speaker and career panelist for the Houston Community College System. Go Astros, there you go. Since joining Symphony Talent in early 2018, John has been helping increase candidate flow and quality for his clients, while also providing a strategic approach to evangelizing and adopting the employee value proposition. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Kevin. It's great to be here.
So today we're going to be discussing how Reyes Holdings has transformed their candidate experience by deploying programmatic media to capture, track, and credit the performance of all their marketing efforts, because it's getting quite complex these days, and rightly so, and as it should be, actually, thinking like a marketer in recruiting. And those marketing efforts to deliver the right content to the right candidates at the right time. And we've been talking about this for a long time, and we're actually here and we can do it now. Well, throughout this conversation today, we're also going to be referencing the Reyes Holdings story. We also believe that everyone listening will find ways to apply these best practices as it relates to candidate experience to your organizations today, whether you're in healthcare, retail, hospitality, finance, or whatever industry you're in. Companies big and small can benefit from what we're going to share today. But before we dig in, I'm going to hand it over to Leanne to give us a little bit more background about Reyes Holdings.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, likely you have not heard of our organization. Reyes Holdings is quite a large organization. We are a global food and beverage distributor, but until recently, we've been hiding behind the brands that we actually deliver. So I just wanted to give you a high overview of who we are as a company, and it'll really give you some good context as we go along in today's presentation in terms of why employment branding is so important to us. So Reyes Holdings actually was started back in 1976 by two brothers, Chris and Jude Reyes. Today, this still remains a family-owned and privately owned organization or enterprise. We're made up of 5 business units. Back in 1976, we started with Reyes Beer Division. So that is a beer distributor. Started in South Carolina in a tiny little warehouse. But today, Reyes Beer Division is across the entire United States, and we're actually the largest beer distributor in the U.S. Soon after, we brought into our family of businesses Martin Brower. Again, this is a business you've never heard of, yet we supply 90% of the food to McDonald's across the United States. In fact, we have a global presence, so we're in 19 countries, and again, Martin Brower is supplying McDonald's and all of their food needs. We then brought on Reinhardt Food Service a few years later, also distributing food, but more to the mom and pop restaurants, again, across the United States. And then over the last 4 or 5 years, we've actually brought in 2 distributors for Coca-Cola. Great Lakes, Coca-Cola actually supports the states surrounding the Great Lakes. as well as Reyes Coca-Cola Bottling, which is in California and in Las Vegas. Not only do we distribute those Coca-Cola products, but we're actually also bottling them as well. So that was a new component to our business to really start into the production side of things. So with all 5 of these businesses, as Kevin mentioned earlier, we actually have over 33,000 employees across the globe. On an annual basis, we're bringing in $33 billion of revenue, which is significant, especially for a privately owned organization. So one of the things that I'll share, again, in more detail is because we are privately owned and family owned, we haven't really thought about doing anything from an employment branding and candidate experience standpoint. But because of our future growth plans and acquisition plans, we needed to start doing that. And so the last 18 months have been a great journey for us, and I'm excited to share more throughout today. Kevin, back to you.
And as long as you're distributing the IPAs, Leanne, I'm in good hands.
Plenty to go around.
There we go. Excellent. Well, that's exciting. Did not know all that about the organization, and that's great that you guys have been growing so dramatically. And so, what I want to talk about just for about 30 seconds is Talent Board and the organization that I run. For those who aren't familiar, we are the first nonprofit research organization focused on the elevation and promotion of a quality candidate experience. We've been doing this research with employers big and small across industries for 9 years now, going into our big 10-year anniversary in 2020. So we're super excited to be here and talking shop with Leanne and John around recruitment, programmatic marketing, and candidate experience. So let me transition things back to John so we can kind of give us an overview about programmatic marketing.
Sure thing. Thanks, Kevin. So we wanted to talk a little bit about what programmatic media is in terms of, how it applies to you as an employer, how your recruitment teams and your TA teams can utilize it to really drive a good flow of candidates that actually match the qualities and the branding and everything that you're trying to push for your business. In basic terms, programmatic marketing uses analytics to target specific audiences with whom you want to send your recruiting message. So we use algorithms to serve people ads who fit a profile of a possible candidate for your organization, but we also, with programmatic media, optimize the ad buying process in real time. In other words, we send more money to the channels that are performing better. And that leads to high cost efficiency, but even better, it happens automatically, requiring minimal manual tweaks. Really, it frees up your recruiter's time, gives you more focus from them on the more human side of recruiting. And I want to talk a little bit about why this is the case today. Give you a little timeline about how programmatic media in recruitment marketing has evolved. And as you can see here, in less than a decade, job aggregators like Indeed reinvented the world of job boards. Indeed is now the single largest site for job seekers searching for job postings. And job boards themselves are the 6th leading source of talent for recruiting agencies, which is a world where companies, talent acquisitions really need to be competing. So programmatic is not the way to compete, it's the way to win in this world that Indeed has created, because we're using AI and machine learning at every step in the process to automate more of the ads that you're putting out there to try and get people interested in your brand. And we can apply real-time performance analytics, sourcing strategies, and ultimately optimize your entire budget to be more proactive. And we wanted to talk about the growth of programmatic media. And Kevin, I know you had some stats that you wanted to share about this.
Oh, absolutely. So for me, it's fascinating to see how this has actually evolved over the past 2 decades, because I've been by trade, even though I've been in the HR recruiting technology space overall in the past 20 years, I've been marketing since the beginning of my early incarnations. I've always been involved in that. So just to see how this has evolved is pretty fascinating. And according to eMarketer, advertisers are expected to spend nearly $60 billion. Wow. on programmatic display in 2019. And that estimates by the year 2021, nearly 88% or 81 billion of all US digital display ad dollars will occur programmatically, which is not surprising considering where we're at. And it's anticipated that automation will account for almost 60 billion in ad dollars in 2019. That's about 85% of the US digital display ad market. Huge. And of that, 2/3 of those who audit with those automated dollars will go to mobile, which isn't surprising either. About 1 of every 2 ad dollars goes towards video. Now, John, how has this changed the process for you and your clients then?
Yeah, it's been a really big shift, especially with the capabilities we have with programmatic media today. We can reach audiences like we never have before. That stat is the amount spent on programmatic display and talks about a little bit the reach that companies have now to reach candidates in different places. Typically when you think about niche job boards and the whole posting and praying mentality that we're trying to get away from, that a lot of companies have already gotten away from, we look at channels like Google, we look at banner delivery networks, we look at video delivery networks, and we're not talking about people or job boards that may have 10,000 users or 10,000 candidates visiting the site every day. We're talking about billions of people that you can reach through these messages. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today is top of funnel versus bottom of funnel, influencing applications versus driving applications. And we'll get into that more later. But in terms of your question, Kevin, I used to sit with clients once a year and plan media strategy. We talk about what sites to contract with, what was working, what was not working. And there was a lot of evaluating and turning knobs to make sure media spend was being optimized and staying within budget. And I'm sure if you're listening to this and you're not dealing in programmatic media today, this is sounding pretty familiar. That being said, we're now constantly evaluating the performance of campaigns rather than once a year. It allows us to be a lot more proactive, but it also makes it easy to make real-time adjustments to the campaigns that will benefit the overall media strategy. Traditional media demands human intervention and significant amounts of time and review and evaluation to apply, where programmatic media really eliminates a lot of that time that we spent evaluating all of that different data and lets us make changes a lot more quickly.
And that's super important, right, as well, because for just saving time and money, big time. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, going from a situation where you're, meeting quarterly to talk about all of the different things that may or may not have worked, and then, the money's already spent, it's gone, to being able to see that something is not performing accurately or to the level that a recruiting team would want and change it. That flexibility is something that is new and very valuable to recruiting teams today.
Right, and money that can be applied elsewhere in recruiting too. So let's now go back to Leanne, because she's going to talk about how a world-class candidate experience, something very true to my heart, begins with an employer brand transformation. Leanne.
Thank you. Yes. It's been a very interesting journey over the last 18 to 24 months for our enterprise. First thing is, we've been a secret in the market in terms of being an employer out there. And so we realized that very quickly we needed to start changing that. And the employer brand is allowing us to do that. First step for us was developing a formal employee value proposition, which really started to focus our efforts on being able to leverage our size. Historically, our businesses have really worked independent from each other and really looked at developing talent and identifying talent with blinders on. And so we're now starting to really look at, okay, as an enterprise, how can we help each other versus work against each other with a very consistent and sound employer brand? And we're still working on that. We've made quite a few adjustments already, but it's now bleeding into what we're able to do from a programmatic standpoint. So it's really starting to transform what we're able to do to attract talent. When we do attract them, when they come to our career sites, how do we make this an exceptional candidate experience? how do we educate them on who we are as an enterprise? You know, no longer do we need to kind of hide behind the marketing efforts of our brands that we supply, but rather we're starting to talk about who we are as an enterprise. We have a very entrepreneurial spirit of the organization. It really is empowering. Even though we're very large in size, our employees tell us that it feels like being part of a family. It's not that corporate environment that you would think of when you think about an enterprise of our size. So it's been a very interesting way for us, not only to learn about ourselves, but also, again, start to tell the story in the marketplace. And by doing so, that candidate experience is completely different today than it was just a few years ago. So we're excited about where this journey is leading. And again, it's starting to now bleed into the media campaigns that we're offering through our programmatic media efforts. John, if you want to go to maybe the next slide. I love this slide, just visually. You know, this really starts to tell the story of who we are as an organization. When you think of any of our brand names, Reyes Holdings, Martin Brower, you know, et cetera, you know, they're not recognizable names, and we know that. Even though we've been named one of America's best large employers by Forbes, you know, again, nobody really knows who we are. And then when you top on that the Reyes Holdings name, Reyes Holdings is our corporate environment. And when you think about our 800 plus openings, maybe 20 of them are for our corporate environment. Yet when I look at our historical use of media, you know, we were focusing on using LinkedIn and even Career Builder. You know, LinkedIn, yeah, that helped our Reyes Holdings corporate openings, but it certainly didn't support the needs of the types of roles that all of our other businesses were using. And so this visual, again, starts to show, you know, who we are. You know, we're looking for drivers. We're looking for warehouse employees. We're looking for merchandisers and sales. And using LinkedIn and Career Builder didn't necessarily help us truly identify and find and brand to those types of employees. So it was really important for us to kind of change our mindset and start meeting our candidates when and where they were at. And that included blanketing the market with media campaigns across a variety of mediums. You know, one of the things that I always say is that, you know, in today's social media environment, we all have ADD. I mean, I'm looking at my phone right now. It's blowing up. I've got, you know, Snapchats coming through. I've got, you know, news coming through on my phone. I even have a weather update. I'm in Chicago. It's snowing, and of course, the craziness around that. Candidates need to see you multiple times. They need to see you in a multiple variety of places. And that's what the programmatic media has allowed us to do. We're no longer stuck simply on LinkedIn, where our candidates simply aren't available to us. You know, we're looking at ways that we've never thought of as an organization. You know, banner ads, Google AdWords, social media campaigns. We're maximizing our talent community and nurturing our talent leads through, you know, email and texting blasts. So again, it really has transformed what we are able to do, how we are able to reach the candidates where they are, and it's doing so in a very automated fashion using the programmatic technology that we have access to. John, if you want to go to the next slide, yeah. Again, here's one of our career pages. This happens to be our Reyes Holdings career page. You know, again, you know, only a few of these openings are truly corporate or Reyes Holdings environments. So we're really looking at finding a variety of candidates through a variety of mechanisms. And, you know, along with building our brand awareness, we really needed to find an easy and quick way to automate that broad outreach. You know, when we think about one of our major high volume openings, which is of course drivers, we are always looking for drivers. And when we're not able to find drivers, it really affects our bottom line. You can imagine it impacts the business and the service that we're able to provide to our customers. But like all of our, you know, organizations, we want to hire more people, but we don't want to spend any more money doing it. And, you know, again, our programmatic offerings that we do today is really allowing us to do exactly that. Before we started with programmatic, and we did start at the beginning of 2019, As I mentioned earlier, we were, again, that very decentralized model. Each of our businesses, down to the location, were doing their own recruitment efforts, were managing their own media campaigns. And we had several issues with that. First, frankly, when I started 2 years ago, we had no idea how much we were spending on media. Absolutely no idea. And then second, when I started talking with our recruiters in the field, by looking at it individually, independently, down to each location, they were just using any type of media available to them. And sometimes those media offerings that they were using were actually competing with each other and duplicating efforts. So they were spending twice for the same media campaign to end up on Indeed. So, all in all, it was really hard with the way that we were doing things to have any improvement in our strategy. We certainly had no idea what was working or what wasn't working. And so it was difficult to really pinpoint, what those successes or opportunity areas were. Now, recent statistics from Gartner suggest that companies are spending over 11% of their annual marketing budgets on digital advertising, which makes it really the single largest investment when it comes to your marketing resources and programs. So, we wanted to find out how can we improve our return on investment of one of those largest investments, especially if you don't have the insights into what those metrics are. So before we started leveraging as an enterprise the programmatic strategy, we really had no idea where the spend was and whether it was working. And now that we've implemented the programmatic technology earlier this year, we have direct line of sight of not only how much are we spending, for each of our businesses, but is it working? And we make adjustments based on those results and really have transformed exactly what we're able to offer and how we're able to hire the talent that we need to meet those business needs.
So definitely these are obstacles, of course, that many organizations face, no matter the industry and even necessarily company size or complexity. So John, why don't you talk a little bit more about how programmatic media can help address some of the things that Leanne was talking about?
Yeah, definitely, Kevin. And you're right there that those issues, the types of things that Leanne is describing, that they cross industries, they cross, client types, they're similar pain points. Everyone has trouble getting their messaging in front of the right people and the right channels, especially when they're starting off with programmatic advertising. And that's why I want to talk about stats and metrics that actually matter to the recruiting and hiring process when it comes to media placements and advertising your jobs. These are 4 areas that we like to focus on: like cost per hire, time to hire, CPA, and candidate drop-off. And the reason that we want to measure against this, these are all performance-based statistics. These are things that can be compared and sliced and diced and really drilled down to see where on the campaign level, on the job level, by business unit, where all of these things are having an impact and really affecting your ability to hire good candidates. A lot of organizations are already in the digital media space. As Leanne mentioned, that 11% number of budgets going to digital advertising. And many of them are advertising on job boards like Indeed with ad hoc postings or posting on online newspapers or niche boards. However, that mentality is really not going to get you where you want to go for attracting candidates. It's not programmatic. It's not being reported on if you've got a niche board or if you've got for example, a site that can't accept a tracking tag, and it's not standardized most of the time. Think about what Leanne was saying with the multiple business units having their own plans and different departments trying to get a hold of whatever marketing is available for their particular candidate base. That's a common story. And in order to be successful in this world, you really have to understand that it's not just about the media. It's about telling the story and attracting the right candidates through brand executions that are standardized, that are consistent, that are in the right networks, and so you're really creating an experience there of your own.
Absolutely. And we talk a lot about obviously consumer facing businesses that candidates are customers are candidates, and that in the literal sense. But at the same time, the way that we consume, period, in life and in work and in everyday day-to-day living, really, we want, these are the things that we want, how we want to consume them. And as consumers, even as candidates, even for B2B companies at the same time, we really want the information when we want it. We're doing the research on companies. We're going out there. We're going to Glassdoor. We're going to Indeed. We are going to the career sites. We are looking for the more information that we need. So that's why organizations, again, have to really, more than ever, and we've been talking about this for, I know, many years in my experience, but you have to be more like a marketer than you've ever been before. And again, just like consumers have evolved in the way that we do research and make purchases, candidates, of course, are savvier than ever in their job search and more than likely to have previous relationships with employers. In fact, those who are referred and have a previous relationship are much more likely to even increase the relationship with that employer. They're conducting their own research. About 70% the past few years, the trend that we've seen. For those that aren't actually being sought after and sourced, most of us are doing our own research. And candidates are also diving deeper into, again, as I mentioned, career sites, social media, Glassdoor, and the list goes on. We're doing our own research, and again, they want to be prepared and take ownership of their journey. And we see it in the data every year, and organizations that are meeting that need are the ones that have the competitive advantage at the end of the day.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Most definitely, and that's why it's really important to track all of the different sources of media that you're promoting to. I mentioned, sites not taking tracking tags earlier. That's a big part of what we want to talk about, and exposing that candidate journey and seeing the path that goes into a hire. So yeah, you're on the money, Kevin.
Absolutely. So, and again, these are really the top factors that we just, what I was just highlighting, and just to make it even more crystal clear, they want to understand company culture. They want to understand what the employee experience currently is like, what the day in the life is more than ever. They want that level of transparency that fortunately more and more organizations are actually providing today, and are giving them a competitive advantage when they do that. And just that connection with the brand. Even if I apply once and don't move that far, or don't get hired at the end of the day, and I have a decent experience and I have a high level of perceived fairness, I'm willing to engage that organization again and that brand again. So that's really important for them to be connected there, don't you think, John?
Absolutely. Yep. And this is really what we're talking about with identifying where you can engage with candidates, where you can influence candidates, into getting more familiar with your brand, and ultimately lead them down the path of hire. As I was saying before, you need to analyze all of the talent marketing touch points you have as an important piece of the puzzle to make informed buying decisions about media. If you don't have reporting on it, it's really difficult to compare your media efforts. It's really difficult to make an informed decision about what you should be investing in for the next month, quarter, year, depending on what your advertising strategy looks like. But the goal is to stretch your dollars to the max. You want to get as much bang for your buck, if you will, when you're picking different recruitment advertising channels. And that's why we want to track all those different steps. That's why we want to see the Glassdoors of the world. We want to know where candidates are, to Leanne's point, meeting them where they are, so we can better communicate the brand message, so we can better attract talent that's going to be right for your business. So let's just take a look at a candidate profile that we might target, and walk through the different ways that person would interact with a brand. So right here we've got Lisa. She's 35. She lives in Los Angeles, California. She's a married mother of 2 elementary age children. She is mid-career in supply chain, and she speaks Spanish. She's also socially active, has multiple e-commerce accounts, is a soccer mom, studying for her MBA, and is a runner. So this is the footprint that Lisa leaves on the internet about herself, based on her behavior, based on the sites that she visits. And it turns out she would be a pretty perfect warm lead for a position at Reyes. So I'll let Leanne kind of talk about that a little bit and how Lisa might interact with the channels that we've got going.
Yes, Lisa is exactly the kind of candidate or talent lead that we're looking for. We actually have several of our businesses that do have locations in Los Angeles, so we absolutely would want to reach Lisa. Historically, before we started using programmatic, in many ways we were kind of just throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping something would stick. Whereas the programmatic technology is really allowing us to target those Lisas of the world, educating her on who we are as an enterprise and what we're able to offer her and how in line we are with what her needs are for a family perspective, from a career perspective, et cetera. So, again, this technology really allows us to focus on the Lisas of the world, and the back-end benefit has been very powerful for our recruiters. My recruiters are thrilled that the candidates they're now seeing has the quality that we're looking for, whereas historically their productivity was spent weeding through tons and tons of resumes that just weren't relevant to really meet our business needs. So, so this programmatic media really has, again, transformed us in many fronts. Number one, the candidate experience is exceptional for Lisa. She's easily able to find us, know who we are, and then again, the productivity from our recruiters has been transformed. They are able to spend their time that really is going to lead to hiring the best folks for the openings that we have. So, it all kind of feeds in together. It starts with our branding, being able to tell that story and again, providing that exceptional candidate experience. John?
So let's talk about that a little bit. Typically when we're looking at a candidate journey, we don't think about it like this. We don't think about the fact that in general, we're seeing 14 to 18 different interactions from a candidate with a brand before they submit an application. Traditionally, the way that people are looking at even more recent marketing data is, that Indeed paid search being the last click before the application. And even though that's showing up as the last click before the candidate is hired, what we're trying to peel back the layers here on, what we're trying to really see is the broader story. Where was that candidate? What factors influenced them before they decided to apply to that open position? And that's kind of a tough question to get asked as a marketer is, okay, well, yes, they applied through Indeed, but what happened before then? Can you confidently tell your internal business partners that you know what the other 13 touch points are if they had 14 before they applied? And so that's really what we want to track. We want to track everything because data powers decisions. That's what we're really shooting for when we take an automated programmatic approach is how do we get away from the manual strategies? How do we get away from the, I feel like this job board works because my candidates tell me that's where they heard about my job. We really want to have more data-driven decisions than that, and that means knowing the impact of things like digital banners, SMS campaigns, paid and organic Google traffic, sponsored jobs on aggregators like Glassdoor, ZipRecruiter, Indeed. When we look at promoted content for social media, that's another aspect that we want to analyze when we're making decisions about budgets, and it goes even to talent networks and career websites. So in short, everything that you're doing from a talent acquisition standpoint, we want to measure. And it often will result in more of a story like this where there are so many different touch points along the way. And if you're not really evangelizing and really pushing budget to those places where candidates are, then you're missing an opportunity to tell your brand story. And that's something that we can help address with programmatic media. So I wanted to take a step back here and really look at how Reyes put this into action. I know we've talked about it in a broad sense, but I wanted to give Leanne the opportunity to kind of talk about how they felt beforehand, what they were doing beforehand, and now what media channels they're leveraging.
Yeah. So yeah, historically, we were using very few media options. Like I mentioned earlier, LinkedIn, Career Builder were the mainstay, a couple of others, but again, very sporadic across the businesses and very independently silo focused. We've really been able to make a great business case using some of the data that we have to showcase the importance of truly blanketing the market when looking at it from a recruitment media standpoint. One of my favorite, and maybe it's a bit of an obvious analogy, is, think about this when you're shopping for something on Amazon. Maybe you put that item in your cart, but you didn't buy for whatever reason. Well, gosh darn it, those shoes will follow me, forever in a variety of places that I go. And it's the same concept from a recruitment marketing standpoint. Eventually I see those shoes enough, I'm going to go back and buy. And that's, been a very well-received analogy for our businesses to truly understand the importance of it and why we really need to look at this as a much broader strategy than just the traditional job boards that we've looked at. So again, this has been an education for our organization, but a great education. And we've been able to use the data that we're able to get from the programmatic technology to start to tell the story in that education. We kind of started slowly at first, implementing, small pieces of the technology, and just on a monthly basis, it seems like we're adding new and more things and getting more and more excitement kind of generated around it. This was kind of a very important approach for us, especially when I encourage our businesses to play around, try new things. We're going to have significant differences geographically between our businesses. What's working on the East Coast versus what's working in the Midwest versus the West Coast. There could be dramatic differences between the successes. So, my recruiters spend a lot of time really playing around with it and seeing what's working and using the data that we have to truly guide them into, understanding exactly where we're going to have the best ROI. So it's been a great journey for us from that standpoint. We've come a very long way in a very short period of time, and my recruiters would never go back. I can tell you that for sure.
That's great. Yeah, and when we talk about implementing a programmatic media strategy, and we talk about going through the process of paring down what an organization may have traditionally been doing, and looking at the opportunities for them, where they could get more candidate traffic, where they're not present today. That's really the role of an agency partner. I'm not here to sell you Symphony Talent. I'm just saying that if you are going to go down this road, it would be wise to partner with an agency that you trust. About 40% of the budget that we get from our clients is spent on job advertising today. And the benefit of partnering with an agency is that you've got all of that information at your fingertips. You're being guided by experts who do this, all day, every day. And it really helps you optimize the spend with speed and flexibility, so you can keep improving. We want to see growth in applications. We want to see quarter over quarter growth. Everyone wants to see that type of success. But if you don't have things like tags placed on your different efforts, then you may run up against some challenges. Having that tagging in place, having reporting on virtually every effort that you have going through recruitment marketing allows that apples to apples comparison to see how each of the pieces is doing and see how your paid content is actually performing. Further, you do get a sense of how your top of funnel ads, think about paid social content like I was just mentioning, banner ads, video content, all of those, that's very top of funnel. Candidates are just getting introduced to your brand in that scenario. We want to know how those efforts, how all of that time, put into creating that video and cutting it down to 15 seconds, how, all of that creative work that went into those digital banners, we want to see how that's impacting hires at the end of the day. We want to see, are the type of people that are getting those advertisements displayed to them, are they eventually going to the bottom of that funnel and we see them on sites like ZipRecruiter, Indeed, that type of thing. So, you know, those are just some of the benefits of partnering with an agency. We look at that kind of stuff, and I know that I hope that that's been helpful for you, Leanne.
Yes, to put it simply, there's no way that we, for our organization, been able to do this on our own. You know, not even a year ago, we truly were posting and praying, and that was our mentality, and that was our understanding of what was possible, you know, only a year ago. I look back at that, and I can't believe how far we have come. And again, we couldn't, for our organization at least, have done this without a partner that truly has brought a level of expertise that we never thought imaginable. And we're continuing to learn things. You know, it seems like on a weekly basis, there's something brand new that's brought to us, and that strategy is really kind of continually adjusting to just meet the demands of our market and the way that it is today. One thing that I will share, 1 month after we launched our programmatic media campaigns, we looked at our Google Analytics of the activity on our career sites. And I knew programmatic was going to make a difference, but we more than doubled in most of our businesses on their career pages. We more than doubled the candidate activity on those career pages. I almost fell out of my chair. And I thought, well, maybe this is just a fluke. But it's been consistent ever since then for all of 2019. Just the massive increase in the activity that's happening on our career sites, the visits, the applies, et cetera. So we've been thrilled. And again, this is not something that we would have been able to do on our own. Our applications, our clicks, our hires, all from the media campaigns. We have full access and viewing to know exactly what's happening. We're thrilled with the results. So I can't say enough about it. And again, it's just not something we would have been able to do on our own, especially in such a short period of time.
That visibility into results is really important. It lets you track, you know, kind of the candidate path down the funnel. And I'm glad to hear that, you know, you're seeing those results in your Google Analytics and in your actual, you know, applications and everything like that. I do want to talk a little bit about how we approach path influenced hires and how we talk about that. You know, at Symphony, we look at things in terms of drivers and influencers, with the influential pieces of marketing that we're pushing out there, contributing more to the top of the funnel, the influential part of the funnel, and driving content like sponsored job postings directly impacting your application count. So that would be kind of the driver category. So with sites like Glassdoor, for example, you may have a large amount of candidates that are visiting that property without actually applying from that site. And so that, you know, just doubles down on the importance of having, you know, tracking in place there, because you'll see there are properties on the internet that have a presence in candidates' journeys, and it's consistent. And it's one of those things where you can identify the type of person that's going to be on that platform and align the advertising to be consistent with those roles. So even if the last click doesn't come from that environment, you at least have a presence there. And again, it's all trackable. So I know we kind of talked about it a little bit, Leanne, but how did having access to that type of information help your team?
It's made a huge difference. Seeing the results and the data really has transformed what type of boards that we're using. You know, historically, we thought we had a couple of job boards, you know, specific to drivers and some of our entry-level positions that we thought was the end-all be-all, and that's where we were getting all of our candidates from. But now that we're looking at the data and the drivers, we're seeing that that really has no influence on where these candidates are coming from to us. So it's really allowed us to really transition some of those dollars to other boards that we had no idea had such a big influence. Craigslist, as an example, it's been a huge driver for us. We had no idea a year ago that that was the case. So, you know, it truly has allowed us to focus our dollars, and in some case, save our dollars because we're really, focusing on the areas that we should be out of the gate versus spending dollars that just aren't giving us the return. So it's been truly transformational for us from that end as well.
Yeah, and we can't just look at the last click. We can't just look at what's driving applications, by itself. We need to understand the whole story, and we, especially with a client like Reyes, we wanted to understand what's spurring candidates to make branded searches. What other things are influencing their behavior? And that's when we really get into the data and the reporting that we provide to answer that final question, which is why. So when we talk about the candidate journey, and we talk about kind of a snapshot of where candidates are coming from, the importance of understanding the channels that are effective to your candidate base really can't be overstated. I kind of mentioned before, we know where your type of people are, whether that's a certain social property, diversity site, or maybe it's just job aggregators. And the case of drivers, for example, maybe that's just people coming from those traditional last click sites. But data can help inform where you should be placing your creative dollars and your research. So if you're delivering ads programmatically across channels, you can actually tailor that creative either on those sites or within those ads to the individual candidates that you're trying to get to apply. To use an example, you wouldn't serve an engineer some customer service creative or vice versa. The knowledge of where your candidates are, in those specific job families, that's going to help you determine the what, where, and the how behind your creative execution. So once you have the data about where these types of people are coming from, you can then tailor the creative to match up with the advertisements that you're placing. And that's going to make a better candidate experience. It also, and maybe this is the obvious part, has a huge impact on your budget. If you're pouring dollars into a channel or site that isn't effective for your particular candidate base, in Leanne's example, this would be LinkedIn and Career Builder, probably not going to be the same for your particular business. But when you compare that to your other path influenced or directly influenced applications, that money really could have been better spent elsewhere. So when we talk about the whole goal of programmatic media, it's so we're sending budget to the right places, and hopefully we're doing that automatically. So Kevin, I'm going to pass it back to you. We've got some key learnings to take away here. So back to you.
Yeah, I've been furiously jotting notes down. It's just so much great information that you guys have been sharing today about just the power of programmatic marketing, and just listening to Leanne talk about the impact that it's had on her organization is it's super exciting. So some key takeaways for everybody that's on the call now. Obviously, if we didn't store every data point in the entire candidate journey, we wouldn't have been able to see the true impact of each marketing touch point. And when we get to the questions, I actually want to come back to that a little bit, but let me keep going for right now. And then all things AI, automation, manual optimization, they all require data, and it only works though if you actually have it and use all of it. And that's actually, I think the crux of a lot of where companies get up to the gate and then freeze, right? And maybe we can talk a little bit more about that when we do in the Q&A section. But so again, it's really easy to see that identifying candidate engagement influencers can lead to more efficient paths to the conversion and hire, and from the candidate's perspective as well, an improved experience along the way, especially based on what Leanne has shared. Don't you think, Leanne?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just been a fun journey for us. And now we have information that we can share with our hiring managers, with our HR folks who are actually on the ground doing the recruitment. They're now starving for this information now that they know we have it at our fingertips. So it's been exciting. And at the end of the day, we're hiring people faster than we ever have before, and we're retaining them. Our brand has really allowed to make sure that we're, finding the quality out there as well. So from every aspect, this truly has been transformational.
Excellent. And so how have you brought this process back to your team, Leanne? I mean, obviously this information is now at your fingertips, and it's helped really allow you to educate your teams in the field, HR, hiring managers, obviously by telling the story of day to day, week to week, month to month of what's happening. It's hard to ignore the fact that this data, that when you're finding and hiring new employers faster than ever, it's also opened up your eyes, right, to the endless options available to you. So talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been many facets of it as we kind of went down this journey. Number one, having the vendor partner has been instrumental and key for us. They've really helped us evolve throughout this entire process. Initially, they were helping us with the training. Now, I've got several team members that have become experts, and they're actually doing training on our behalf. We stay in touch with our super users who use the technology. It used to be weekly, now it's monthly. We really have easily become experts in the technology and all of the offerings. And again, stay very closely aligned with our vendor to continue training us and educating us on, what's possible. So it's been very interesting for us, and I can't say enough about it. We are in just a very different place today than we ever were. And as I mentioned earlier, my recruiters may hunt me down in the parking lot if we were ever to move away from this. So all good around the board. So
And we don't want that.
Thank you.
No, absolutely not. So thanks, Leanne and John, so very much. I think we're now to the point for questions. And so we can take questions now. If you can actually submit them through either the Q&A part of the Zoom console or even via chat if you've got questions. But while we're kind of queuing up this last part of the webinar, my first question that I have is that it's been great to hear the journey, Leanne, of you and the team and working with Symphony Talent and what you've done with programmatic marketing. But, again, when you get organizations that are starting to understand more the value of more targeted marketing in recruitment, they get up to the gate and then they're like, then what? Where do we start? Let's review really briefly again. And how did you make build that business case as well? Right?
Yeah, no, a good question. Frankly, I don't have a budget. I have to go to all of our businesses and say, hey, this is what's happening. This is how long it takes us to fill positions. This is how much I think you're spending, but frankly, I don't know for sure. I'm sure it's way more than what we actually think is happening. And here's the impact on, our positions being open for so long. We think by doing, this programmatic media, number one, we'll be able to, know exactly how much we're spending. We'll be able to see the results and know if we're getting our return on investment. And oh, by the way, in real time, we can adjust our campaigns to make sure that we're getting the return that we're looking for. So I also, frankly, had the luxury of having major contracts with a couple of vendors that we were frankly overspending on. So I said, look, I think we can do the same thing using the monies from those contracts by putting it into a programmatic technology, and it'll be a wash. And again, we'll be able to see our results. So, that's how I was able to get support from our C-suite in order to move in this direction. And frankly, I undersold it. The results that we've been able to showcase has been so significant. Our C-suite is just eating it up. They couldn't be more thrilled. And it's, again, had a major impact on our bottom line because we're hiring, in many cases, twice as fast as we were historically. So all the way around, it's just been a great journey for us.
Well, that's excellent. And the fact that your business leadership sees the value, sees the impact it's having on the business, and is, quote unquote, allowing you to double down on that. So that's pretty exciting in that regard. We know another question that I have in regards to the candidate perspective, we know that candidates every year tell us in the research that they want to know, they want to understand more about the culture, the career development opportunities, again, what it's really like to work there and whatever that role is that they're potentially interested in. So how did the process go in regards to obviously identifying the kinds of content that you want to send out to both passive and active candidates and getting really to attract them? And how did you refine that further, right? To understand on where you're finding those folks. Like you made the comment about Craigslist, right? It became a great resource for you. Tell us a little bit more about that kind of refining content process.
Sure. Yeah. Well, for us, we started this by developing an EVP, an employee value proposition. And that was the first time that we started looking at the enterprise as a whole versus the individual businesses. So that process really started helping us develop the content that we knew that we needed to deliver out in our media campaigns. So for us, that was the first component and very instrumental in getting those media campaigns to target the kinds of candidates that we were looking at and what kind of messaging we wanted within it. But in terms of finding like the Craigslist of the world and those different boards and pay-per-click options that worked for us, it really came down to playing around with it and experimenting. So when we were training, I said, look, guys, we're not going to know until we play around and we try different things. And so we kind of said, look, see what you want to, try out, and we'll look at the results and begin to understand very quickly, what's working and what's not working. So it was kind of trial by error. We had the luxury of being able to do that. It happened quicker than I thought it would. I thought maybe this was going to be a 6-month trial and error, but within a very, few months, we were able to really identify those key partners for us. So that's kind of where we landed and how we are operating today.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that, Leanne. I think we're just about out of time. So John, did you want to add anything from a broader perspective about some of the questions that Leanne was addressing at the end?
Well, I just want to piggyback onto something Leanne just said, because it's something that we talk about a lot as an agency, which is the testing field. And, for a lot of organizations, they're in these committed contracts with certain vendors. Maybe they're a niche job board that happens to have some job search functionality, or maybe they're a resume database, maybe they're a job aggregator, whatever it is. When you have these long-term committed contracts, you don't have the ability to diversify your strategy. And so you don't have the chance to test out new things, which, especially in the case of Leanne and Reyes, that would have been, a critical step that they missed. So having a flexible budget, having the openness and the ability to try out different channels is really what's going to make your marketing plan the most effective, regardless of the size of your business. So I'm glad that was one of the key learnings that they had, because that's something that we preach all the time.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much, Leanne and John, and thanks everybody for joining us today. And I believe we're going to make this recording available as well after the fact. And just want to thank everybody for their time today. Have a great rest of the week.